Very good morning, everyone. I hope I'm clearly audible. And you all have to pardon me with my hoarse voice today because I think the ongoing viral has affected me very badly. But yes, this is one opportunity which I certainly did not want to miss. So, first of all, thank you so much to the organizers for considering me for this particular slot. And I actually would like to pick up my words from where Aparna has left. She has been talking a lot about child-centric education, creating the right kind of the environment, creating, the environment where children are prompt to ask questions, or rather, it has to be more of in-basket method, where children are asking questions and getting the answers and exploring the answers. So I think this is exactly what one is supposed to do, and especially in today's time, it is more important because COVID has shown us a lot of highs and lows where we realize that it is just not only the education, but also the connect with education is very important. And when I say connect, it is the mental, physical, and emotional connect. And when you talk about mental, physical, and emotional aspect, then certainly you are talking about relationship. And this is what exactly today I'm going to talk about the emergent curriculum, which which is the need of the hour, but the main key of the main ingredient of the same is relationship driven emergent curriculum. So I have a small presentation and majority of the statements I have written there, which I would be reading and just adding on a couple of case studies to it. And I would certainly like to pick up few questions towards the end if you have any. But I want you all to constantly ponder upon one thing, and we can certainly discuss towards the end of this presentation that what has been your experience with relationship driven environment. First of all, have you ever experienced it? And then how it has affected you. When I say relationship driven environment, I'll just tell you in a very simplified language. When you were in school, you must be having, a teacher who was your favorite, or you were the favorite of that teacher. How did you perform in that particular subject? How do you remember that teacher today? How that teacher has impacted you? Or maybe as an educator, when you started your journey, how people have mentored you, helped you, and supported you. So there have been a lot of relationship what people experiences, and especially in school arena, there are a lot. So let me just take one after the other and let us talk about it. So yes, the need of creating a flexible and relationship-driven learning environment. Why flexible? Because every individual is unique, and celebrating the uniqueness of every individual is something which is required when we talk about the various attributes and virtues, and more so the holistic learning. So yes, here we go. The next slide, please. So, what is a learning environment? So, learning environment is just not about the school or the classroom or the peer group or the teachers or the resources, but I think this is the amalgamation of everything. So, it starts from the physical locations, the physical environment, the context, and the culture in which the students learn, the location. Of course, since students they learn in a wide variety of settings, such as outside the school locations, outdoor environments, as well as inside an indoor environment. So everything matters. So when we say learning, learning doesn't restrict itself to the school environment. So for any child, the overall environment matters, and this is exactly is called, or the entire ecosystem is called the learning environment. This term also encompasses the culture of a school or a class, its presiding ethos and characteristics, including how individuals interact with and treat one another, as well as the ways in which teachers may organize an educational settings to facilitate learning. So that's a part of the school side. Same way at home, what kind of the environment a child experiences, how people address each other, how respectful, loving, affectionate, and caring they are, how much space they have been given to express themselves. Everything matters, and that's how the entire learning environment for the holistic learning or a development, a holistic learning environment matters. Next, please. So, what are the components of an effective learning environment? So, there are few. Number first is the characteristics of the learner. As I said in the beginning, also, and even Aparna said it, that every individual is unique. And celebrating the uniqueness of every child is very important, and that makes your learning environment child centric. So understanding the characteristics of the learner is very important. What kind of the learner he or she is, whether it is auditory, spatial, or visual learner, or maybe kinetic learner. So you just have to figure it out, the type of learner and learning abilities. Also, the behavior side of the child or anybody whom you are considering the learner. Then the goals for teaching and learning, that's very important. Goal setting and then achieving one after the other milestones. Because at the end of the day, if you say a 5-year-old child or a 10-year-old child or a 15-year-old child across the globe more or less know the similar things. It's only the developmental milestones which are different. The way, the pattern the child learns, that is different. And that makes a child more confident or less confident. That makes a child clear with the concept or confused with the concept, very confident or not at all confident, or for that matter, someone who is collaborative by nature, someone who's kind of aloof by nature. So that also matters. So setting up the goal setting, I mean, setting up the goals, then setting up your milestones, your rubrics are very important. Then the activities that will support learning. So the thing is, activities is just not about pertaining to the topic. I have been an ardent endorser, or I believe in the endorsement of the interdisciplinary learning. And when you talk about interdisciplinary learning, it just cannot be one subject oriented. So when you're talking about what are the activities or the selection of the activities, how to make it so that they are best supporting the learning, it has to carry the aspects, it has to carry the attributes. So it is not like, for example, if you're talking about geometry, your objective just cannot be teaching the child about the parallel lines or the angles and etc. Even your objective should be making that child clear, confident, reflective, and someone who's able to, extend the similar knowledge to the peer group. This is the objective, what you look at. And then the choice and the selection of activities should be done. So it just cannot happen based upon what the topic is. It has to happen based upon what environment you're creating and what output you're expecting from a student. And I personally believe that you have to prepare your children for the unseen. You have to prepare your children for the future, make them global citizens. So even in my school, any child who comes in pre-K or K1 or K2 or grade 1, that is not that I'm admitting that child for today. I have to create, I have to build, I have to nurture this child in such a way so that after 15 years from now, wherever the world would be moving, the child will have sustainability. The child will have confidence. The child will have knowledge to conquer it all at the global level. So I think the approach has to be highly futuristic and towards the unseen. Now, another thing is the assessment. That's very, very important because assessment strategies are something like we just cannot be restricting the entire teaching and learning with the pen and paper. And I personally feel that the assessment strategies has to be planned not to assess good, bad, high, low, or the rating or the grading. Rather, it has to be assessed on the lines whether the teacher was successful imparting the correct knowledge, whether the child was able to grasp it, where the child was earlier and where the child is today. What is the goal setting for that particular child? Where we want this child to reach, and what are the tools and techniques to be used to identify the best of the aspects of that child and the strength areas of that child, as well as what are the weaker areas where the child needs some hand holding. So the assessment is again, it has to be based upon a lot of tools and techniques. Very, very important. And that is the best measure and it drives the learning process in the correct direction. Then the culture that infuses the learning environment. As I said in the beginning also, creating the culture or developing the culture rather is something which is very important. So yes, these are the components of effective learning, which I feel we can start building upon the emerging curriculum or the emergent curriculum on that. But yes, it matters because learning environment is the foundation from where you develop the interest, you develop the confidence, you develop the so-called 21st century skills. You name it, and everything will be followed while giving a right kind of the learning environment to the students. Next slide, please. So yes, um, If you're talking about cultures, if you can simply see that there are a lot of things which has to be taken care, into the consideration, which I have already spoken. So it is about learners' characteristics, the content, skills, learner support, resources, assessment, planning the right kind of the resources, the right kind of the activities, the right kind of the tools, technology, and the techniques and strategies for the assessment, and above all, goal setting. So that's very, very important. Yes. Next, please. Why learning environment is important? I'm just talking about learning environment, why it is important. So this is my all-time favorite quote. The cure for freedom is curiosity, but there is no cure for curiosity. And this is exactly is what you have to create the learning environment, which is interactive in nature, which is supportive in nature, which which gives the confidence, which gives the support, and which nurtures the students in such a direction where they feel that yes, they can voice out, they can question, they can explore, they can inquire, and they can get the answers to. Next, please. So the fundamentals. What are the fundamentals of creating such environment? So this is, and why do we need to create it? That's very important. So number one, the education based on interrelationships. This is a main fundamental feature for creating the learning environment. Number two, considering the child as a protagonist, collaborator, and communicator. So it means the child's reaction needs to be observed, needs to be given the due, response. Has to One has to collaborate with the child. It means you have to involve the child in the process of the learning, and the communication is another thing which is very, very important and which has to be a two-way communication. Then the teacher as partner, nurturer, guide, and researcher. Of course, when we say collaborator, it means the child is collaborating with the teachers. It helps. So the teacher has for knowledge sharing. Then the teacher has to act as a collaborator. Nurturer, because yes, the future of the child is in your hands. Guide, because you have seen the world little more than the child. And certainly you can bring in your perspective and you can guide the child towards the right direction. And research, because another thing John Dewey had said long back, and that is, I think we all would agree to that, that if we teach the children of today with the techniques of yesterday, then we are going to rob them tomorrow. So exactly, a teacher, as an educator, we all have to be researcher. We have to figure out where the world is moving, what changes have come. We have to keep ourselves abreast with all the changes and upgraded with that. And then accordingly, we have to deliver what is required in the present times and what would be required in the future. The environment as a third feature. I've been constantly talking about creating the correct learning environment, because the child, the teacher, this relationship gets enhanced, more productive when environment is treated as a third educator. So if I may ask someone, when I say third educator, so one is the educator, the teacher who's teaching. Second one, I skipped. Third one, I'm saying the environment. Can someone just write in the chat box maybe like which educator I'm talking about at number two? Yeah, thank you so much, Ananti, because you have written parents. Yes, because when we talk about the environment, as I said right in the beginning, it is just not about the school. It is just not about the home. It is collaboratively both. So it is exactly the parents, so the educator who's imparting the knowledge in the school, the learning and development, who's responsible for the learning and development in the school, then the parents and the family environment, the family members, and of course the environment as a third teacher. Next is long-term projects as vehicle of learning. I said in one of my earlier slides also, creating the and selecting and choosing the right kind of the resources and activities is very important. And based upon that, you can create the projects which takes the entire learning in a different direction. So as a vehicle of learning, there's the long-term project. So when I say long-term project, it's very simple. Like, you know, um, I don't know about the experiences what you all are having, but I remember when I was in school, project for me means either a 3D model or something, which was over and above. And majority of the time, it used to come as a additional workload. I would certainly use this word, and I'm using this word very carefully, workload. I never enjoyed being a part of those projects because somewhere I felt that this part I have already done last month. Why this has been given to me as a project now, and what will I do creating a periscope or a kaleidoscope, which I have understood the concept and I have seen it earlier in the past also. So, I may be wrong with my approach, but I always feel that these are just a short term thing. But when we talk about the long term projects, so for example, teaching children about expressions, asking them to do journal writing, diary entry. Now, it's a long term project, and you can inculcate this as a habit of your child. So, even if it is a personal trip that he's making or she's making with the parents or the family, after coming back, just writing a journal about it, what all the child has seen. Maybe the child is traveling in the deep, in the forest areas with the parents and could see that some plants were not as green. The same plant was showing light green and dark green leaves. All those observations can be written, and based upon those observations the child can create a questionnaire that can go to the teacher, and teacher can clear all the curiosity of the child. So basically it is just a very very basic example I'm talking about. Even the children who cannot write, I'm talking about pre-k, k1, k2, that is the kindergarten children, at least they should be able to express themselves through drawing. Now that drawing should be beyond your judgment. Like if they have drawn mother, father, and a baby, now but no one is supposed to laugh at it. That how it is looking and how it is appearing, because this is how the child's assumption is, and this is the best of the effort what child has done. So basically, it's about supporting the child and trying to understand how and what the child is going to communicate, convey, and express is very important. And the long term projects can be based upon their communication and collaboration. Coming to documentation as communication, that's very, very important. So, as I said, journal writing, diary entry, creating the drawings, maybe, just putting up, creating a collage of whatever the experiences has been. Or maybe it was just a track the child has gone and just picked up, say, 10 different kind of the leaves. And now this is again a documentation. So, the documentation, and sometimes even how you're conducting the classes, those pictures, those little videos, are very important, which you can keep as you can preserve it. And maybe at the time of when you are having a two-way or a three-way conference, when your children are also participating in this student-led conference, and that could be shown. That would come as a surprise to the children, but that would be a long-term memory as well as a documentation with you, with the parents, with the child, how the learning process took place. Because I think nowadays, this mobile facility, or schools do provide tabs, school do provide assistance when you request them to, you wish to capture a particular learning process. And if not, I'm sure if you are coming up with this idea, no one would say no to that. So you have to figure it out, how it happens and how you have to preserve it, document it. Because there is a very beautiful concept called making learning visible, MLV. And that is entirely based upon documentation, because until unless you make the process of learning visible, the everyone enjoys going back down the memory lane and understand like how the learning has happened. So that becomes an important document for the recap activities as well. And of course, the real life experiences is something I strongly believe in, because even the abstract learning can be done with the real life experiences. It's just about that you have to think like how do you want to bring it on. Like for example, if you ask a child of grade 1 why numbers are important. Now, why numbers are important, I'm just talking about it, why numbers are important, and the child is listening or maybe giving one or two examples also. How about if one day we decide that the corridor where the entire grade 1 passes through, we hide all the numbers. The bus numbers are hidden, every number, whichever, the three numbers or whatever numbering you have done in the school, it all have been covered with a simple sheet of paper. And ask children, what difference do you see? And when they say, okay, the numbers are not there. Okay, so what if the numbers have never been there? Find out the level of difficulty. Now tell why numbers are important, or why so this is basically a very straight question. You are again taking them through the experiential learning, and that turns into a real life experience. So that is these are a couple of fundamentals. You can add from your end also, you can bring in some more with your experiences, but these are the basics which are really important. Next slide please. Yes, I wanted to unmute myself. Yes, done. Now, how does the pedagogy of relationship work? I've been talking about creating the environment. I've been talking about the fundamentals of it. I've been talking about why it is important. And I've been talking about, the three educators. Now, how it works. So if you look at it in the school perspective, a parent teacher is one community, student teacher is another community, teacher teacher is the third community. So when you talk about parent-teacher interaction, it has to be very patient, cordial, respectful, clear, transparent, and to the point. That's very important. Because what happens is, as a parent, sometimes we become over-possessive and we, start overreacting on certain things. And suddenly, rather than listening and understanding the system of a school or the mindset of a teacher or the rubrics what has been set, we start reacting to it, or rather understanding the whole scenario, we start reacting to it. My humble suggestion has always been to all the parents: be patient, be because no school or no educator is sitting there to harm your child or to spoil your child or to damage the future of the child. It could be the difference of opinion, certain creative differences which can be sorted out. You may be having fantastic ideas, you can come forward and suggest, and I'm sure nowadays schools are very flexible and open to learn, so they can certainly accommodate. If not, then they can tell you their limitations pertaining to that. But be very patient, be very cordial and respectful, and try to understand that you are handling your own child, wherein the school talks about the whole community, the community. So that's very, very important. Coming to the next thing is student and teacher. Of course, sorry, one more thing I missed upon. So that was the one side of the parent. Now let us talk about the teacher's side. So even to teachers, I always say, do not feel agitated. Do not feel, that you have been framed or blamed or for something. I think parents have all the rights to ask questions, to know the whereabouts, to know how the progress and the areas, the weak areas, the strong areas, as well as to opine. Because ultimately, these children, they belong to them, right? So, wherein you are there to facilitate the teaching and learning process. So, I think it has to be very, very cordial. That's very important. Now, coming to the next thing, that how does the pedagogy of relationship work in the student and teacher interaction? Again, it has to be very, very cordial. The key word is being cordial and respectful, whether it is teachers to the students or students to teachers. Apart from that, it has to be very open kind of the conversation where the child feels that the due space is given, where the child feels that yes, one can express, voice, question, and opine. Wherein the teacher should also respect the views of the children, should be able to explain what is going wrong or what is right, and above all, there has to be very fine lines drawn when it comes to be a discipline, when it comes to be friendly, when it comes to be a friend, philosopher, and guide. And I think this is a role what a teacher has to play. But certainly with the children, the age group, the the overall approach can differ. Coming to teacher and teacher interaction, that is all the more very important, because ultimately it's your peer group. I mean, you cannot be speaking about ill to your own colleague in front of others, or you cannot be insulting or not listening to your own colleague. So I think being cordial, being humble, being respectful is everywhere. It is a common factor. Of course, to be able to listen to someone, being patient, to be able to understand, a patient hearing, a clear understanding, and as well as clear, you're putting your thoughts also very clearly is very important. When I say half of the things may sound a little bookish, but believe you me, in terms of the school, it does not. Maybe in corporate, it could be a bookish approach. Corporate sectors. I mean, I'm not just being accusing the sectors for their environment or something, but I'm just saying that in different sectors, it could be a different approach. But in schools, creating, maintaining, and endorsing transparency is not as difficult, because ultimately the school and the parents, they both are the equal stakeholders in the growth and development of any student. And I think that's the ultimate goal, what they all work towards it. So that's very, very important. And children, they come very raw to us. And nurturing them is something which is our responsibility, whether we are the parents or we are the educators. So the relationship with each other matters a lot because that brings a lot of, sync in the entire environment, and that becomes more peaceful and progressive. Next slide, please. Once it is said that what children learn does not follow as an automatic result from what is taught. Rather, it is in large part due to the children's own doing as a consequence of their activities and our resources. Relationships are at the very heart of the child centric philosophy. That philosophy is reflected in an environment that encircles the child with three teachers or protagonists. As we said, the first teacher, parent, takes on the role of active partner and guide in the education of the child. The second is the classroom teacher or the teachers who are teaching the subjects. Often working in pairs, the classroom teachers assume the role of a researcher and intentionally engages children in meaningful work and conversation. And the third teacher is the environment, a setting designed to be not only functional but also beautiful and reflective of the child's learning. So it is a child's relationship with parent, teacher, and environment that ignites the true learning. And this quote, I wanted to read it as full because I believe in every single word written on this slide. Next slide, please. Emergent curriculum. Emergent curriculum requires that teachers actively seek out and chase the interest of the children. So, as we have been talking a lot about being child centric, so this kind of the teaching environment demands a high degree of trust in the teacher's creative abilities and envisions an image of the child as someone actively seeking knowledge. It is a perspective that turns structured curriculum with predetermined outcomes on its head. Given the diversity of the children we teach, accepting a canned recipe for teaching evaluation assessment is problematic at best. So this is basically, again, the reading was very important because this is the kind of a recipe what I talk about for the emerging curriculum, that a teacher has to be very progressive by nature, should be, keep very open to the various ideas and thoughts. And innovation is the key here. The confidence is the key here. And the creativity is the key here. So a teacher has to find out, because every year you cannot be teaching with the same methodology to your children. So first of all, a teacher has to observe the children around. The teacher has to figure it out, the strength and the gray areas as the majority. Then the teacher has to figure out the strength and the gray areas of each and every child or the areas of handholding. And then accordingly, the entire delivery pattern has to be designed. When this happens, this is called emerging curriculum. And emerging curriculum, the teacher is always at the center of it. Though it is child-centric, but creating it or converting it into a child-centric approach, the teacher has to be in the center because she is the one, or as a fulcrum, because she or he is the one who would be designing the method of delivery, execution, and learning. Because each child we teach is unique, requiring us to use our own judgment instead of rules to guide our teaching practices. To teach well, educators must ensure that creativity and innovation are always present. So I think we as a teacher, we come up with even a huge responsibility. And again, this pandemic scenario has taught us all very well that being, how to be more creative, how to be more innovative, because we all, I think each one, I take each one of the educators as a COVID warrior too, because they also have come up with various tools, various innovations and ideas, which brought the interest back of the students in the learning process. Otherwise, there has been a lull moment, there has been a moment where we found that nothing is moving, but gradually everyone has got accustomed to the entire system. And ultimately, the learning process did not get affected that much, what we all have assumed right in the beginning. So kudos to all the educators around, kudos to all the parents who supported, or now they have started actually understanding that the role of the educator is very important. So I'm really hoping that in future, the question answers between the parent and teacher would convert into the collaboration that how to bring the best for their child. Next slide, please. Community and parent school relationship. So learn through making connections between things, concepts, and experiences, interacting with other people and surrounding environment. Very important. Comprehensive integration program, which involves meetings between parents, child, and teacher. As I said in the beginning, the three-way conferences between the parent, child, and teacher is very important. Keeping the child in the center while discussing about it in a very positive manner is very, very important. Parents need to be directly involved in the observation and documentation process through their feedback about their work. It becomes all the more relevant during COVID scenario with online teaching learning exercises. For example, how the child acts in the home setting, which allows teacher to build a more complete image of the child. Because when the teaching is happening, when the sessions are going on, what has been the behavior of a child, whether the child was equally disciplined, or the discipline was somewhere which was lacking. The child was not able to concentrate, was not able to sit at one place, or maybe it was constantly when the class was on was fidgeting with one or the other thing. I think these are the small little feedback which should go. That also will help in define the way, the line of action for the educators when these children are coming back to school. Parents, grandparents, and commitment participation is important by volunteering to any particular experience they have. And I always endorse this philosophy, and I always ask the schools, whomsoever I have addressed till date, that start involving your parents, start involving the grandparents. Celebrating grandparents, inviting them, honoring them is not enough. Invite them for the storytelling session. Talk to them about, the mythological facts, what they have been learning, various, the places which have one or the other stories. It's not that they have to believe in that, but they have to share. These are the verbal heritage which is traveling from one generation to other, and their involvement is very, very important. Moving to next, please. Learner educator relationship, I have already spoken about it. It's about the student as well as the educators. The student also wants to feel important and they want to understand because they believe a lot in their educators. If you go back to your school days, young days, or your own children's days, where when you talk anything about the teacher, I think they are the first one to come in defense of them. It means the teacher and the learner, the relationship is very beautiful, very pious, very transparent. So a teacher should also respect this, and accordingly, it has to be created. Next slide, please. Educator-educator relationship. Yes, as I said, to create the more effective environment, it is very important because having peers that you can learn from, collaborate with, and lean on during tough times is essential. I think once again, pandemic has been the biggest teacher in this regard to all of us. We started valuing the presence of the people around. We started valuing their suggestions. We started valuing their inputs. And I seriously hope and wish that this pattern continues. Next, please. The creating, developing, and using physical space of the school. So K-12 setup is a very demanding setup because you have to create the setup based upon various age groups. And when you're creating it depending upon various age groups, then you have to be very careful, like how the nursery has to be designed, how the kindergarten has to be there, how what has to be the role play area. For a little older children, what would be the common area where they can come and they can bring out all their innovation and creativity. Then it also has to be what is an open space where children are going and expressing themselves. So I think the school should have lot of aspects, and accordingly they should be creating these spaces, just not creating the classroom and one very nice the auditorium, fancy cafeteria is not enough. I think children, they come to school to find out their own space. They belong to a classroom, they belong to certain spaces, they need the space where they can express themselves. So that's very important. So in my school we have created a wall, and though it's a new school, I mean in 2019 we have started with fantastic reviews and fantastic numbers what we are getting, but based upon the requirement we would keep on extending that wall. And that wall, and there we have some sandbed, there we have some the very raw material kind of stuff which are non-toxic, biodegradable, and child-friendly material, and we allow children to express themselves whenever they feel like. So sometimes, and our school up to grade 4 doesn't follow the bell ringing and all those things. So it is basically a mother teacher kind of a concept, and teachers, they bring the children out once a day and allow them to express themselves with this simple clay play, or the mud play, or a water play, or a crayons, or drawing on the wall, or footprinting, or whatever. So yeah, I mean, and so creating the right kind of the physical space is very important. because the belongingness, the accountability, then only it comes in the head of the child. And then, of course, it has to be very interactive, your learning spaces, as well as depending upon a multi-sensory environment, because that's very important. When you talk about, creating the holistic development, the physical, emotional, mental development you talk about, then the multi-sensory environment creation is equally important. So yeah, interactive and multisensory is something which is I would like each one of you to take it up. And if you're already doing it, then fantastic. Keep it up. Next slide, please. So I think I have a lot to speak, and still I have a lot in my mind, because this is one topic I love to speak, I love to create, and this is an ever evolving topic, because emergent curriculum itself is such a progressive uh, the topic. And when you talk about relationships, so relationship is something which is there to stay forever. So that's all from my end, but believe you me, this is not enough. This is what I am saying, and I'm sure you must be doing, and you can do much more beyond that. The only agenda should be that yes, relationship matters, and your curriculum should be emerging by nature, which should be relationship driven, because if the environment is healthy, environment is conducive, environment is innovative, environment is inviting, then I'm sure the learning can never be stopped, neither for the students, nor for the educators, and nor for the parents. That's all from my side. Anyone, any question, please feel free to ask. I'll try my best to answer. Any question, please? I'm just trying to check my chat box. So Fatima's question, is it to everyone or it is to me? What shall I go ahead with the answer? Oh, thank you, Ananji. Okay, I could see a couple of remarks here and two questions. So, what is unique about relationship-driven learning? Relationship-driven learning brings the confidence, first of all, because it brings a sense of belongingness. It brings the sense which says that you are important. And I think the moment we feel that yes, we are wanted, we are important, and we are a part of the system, the automatically the learning becomes very positive by nature. So it's about creating the vibes of learning or the long-term learning, as well as it's about bringing instilling the confidence, the long-term confidence as well. So that is the biggest advantage, and there are many other advantages attached to it. So once, if you wish, you can just go through this PPT once again, and that will tell you that there have been a lot of areas, very small little areas, but if given some importance to it, can bring a lot of difference.
Thank you so much, Kavita Bajpai. We would be taking